am Giselle Fernandez with Fidelity National Title, and I am over the moon because here we are again in this phenomenal series. And my guest today is one of my favorite people on the planet in this real estate industry. She is a highly sought after agent with Compass, Florida. In addition to that, she is one of the queens of social media. She has been awarded time and time again for her expertise in this field, Miss Florence Zimmerman.
That's so sweet. So happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe that you're here. And I think it's hilarious, actually. Florence, do you remember how we met?
We did. We met on social media, actually.
How appropriate is that, actually,
crazy.
which
Yeah.
I think is so fun. We actually became friends and got to know one another in that regard. And isn't that the way of the world today?
It's crazy because now I meet people in person and I feel like I know them. And then I realize, wait, I actually don't know you. We met on social media.
I know it. I know it. And then, I mean, on top of that, too, you were even awarded #6 realtor on social media.
So I will backtrack. So when I first started on social media, it was very different than it is now. And I feel like right now, everybody is on social media. You really have to have a social media presence to even be in the industry. But when I first started really dabbling into Instagram specifically, I remember there weren't too many realtors that were on social media. And my big thing was at the time, I had just moved to Florida. So I didn't know anybody and I wanted to figure out a way to connect easily with people. And something I was doing just in my day-to-day life is I was going on Instagram and looking for hairstylists, photographers, and that's when the light bulb kind of just went off. And I thought to myself, okay, well, if I'm going on here and looking for other professionals, why wouldn't somebody do that when it comes to real estate? So that's really where I decided, you know what? I don't know anybody here, but I'm going to find a way for people to come to get to know me. And that's when I started Sold by Flow.
I love that. And I think it's really an inspiration. And the fact of the matter is it's, evolved and you've come such a long way. And I think hearing the backstory of how that came to be makes such perfect sense. And you're absolutely right that in today's environment, it's like a need. You absolutely have to be on social media. But you were one of the trailblazers behind it. Do you remember trying to come up with your actual handle, Sold by Flow?
Yeah, I remember. And I went back and forth on so many things. And I don't remember exactly how I ended up picking Sold by Flow, but it's been Sold by Flow since the beginning. And don't get me wrong, you made a point that yes, it's been a lot of trial and error and it's been a journey. And in fact, I encourage everybody, if you have the time, scroll back to my really old posts.
That's so fun.
Because they are so cringy, but I love them and I'm never going to delete them because I think social media and anything that you really do in the industry is a journey. And you have to start somewhere. And I think that is often what paralyzes people is you go on social media and you see these beautiful embellished videos. I have a videographer now who does all of my videos, but that's not how I started. So I think it's really important to just get started, do something in the beginning. So please go look at my old posts whenever you have a chance. They are so bad. It's so good.
So I literally love the fact that you just brought that up because the reason why I love you and I think that so many other people love you and especially on social media, but in life, right, is because you're very authentic. And I think that's super relatable and it's the truth, right? Like I love the fact you're like a natural leader in this life and I think you're trying to be positive and supportive of other people, which is beautiful. And so it's awesome to raise your hand and be vulnerable and saying, oh my gosh, my videos were cringy. And it's true, it is nerve-wracking to get on social. So the fact that even you, who's been awarded this great award and all these things, you felt like that at some point too. So I think that's a beautiful thing. So I kind of want to touch on a couple of other things too, because quite frankly, you're just a real estate industry, leader and you're phenomenal at what you do. And I'm kind of curious, like why even real estate? How did you get involved to begin with?
So my parents have been in real estate, and they've been in real estate for 20 plus years out
I
of the
love
San
that.
Francisco Bay Area. So that's where my career got started. I always told myself I wasn't going to do it. And here we are, obviously. But that's how I was introduced to anything. And my husband and I, shortly after we got married, we just decided we were going to move to Florida. And I thought that's a great opportunity for me to just really start from zero. As if starting in real estate isn't already hard enough, starting in a new state was probably the most challenging thing I've done to date. But yeah, that's a little bit of how I got started.
Do you even remember what your first transaction was like?
Yes, and it was mortifying. It was
Ah!
probably year to date one of my hardest, toughest transactions that I've done. And oddly enough, it came from a lender who I used to work with in California. So I want to tell the backstory of how I even got this listing because I got this listing day one of being licensed.
Really?
And yep. So
How is that even possible?
so the night before I was taking my exam, I got a call from a lender and he's like, "Hey, do you service Longwood, Florida?" And
You're like,
I had an
yeah.
internal freak out moment. I'm like, okay, where is Longwood? Is it
Right.
close to me? I was still getting to know all of the areas. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I do service Longwood, Florida. So I went to my test the next day and I'm like, I better pass this test right now because I have somebody with a referral. And sure enough, I passed it. And that's how I got the listing. But
That
the
is so
listing
funny.
was the smallest house in Longwood. It was a complete fixer upper,
Aw.
but nobody knew it was a fixer upper because the owner of the house lived in California and he was like, "Hey, my son is renting out the house from me, but we're going to put it on the market. Do you want to go check it out, see what it looks like, give me your thoughts on value?" As soon as I walk in there, I kid you not, there were people living in there. There was mold on the ceiling.
Ah,
The pool was brown. It
side
was
of real estate
awful.
that's not that glamorous.
Yeah. And I told myself right before, I was like, you know what? I want to learn. I really want to learn and I want to be a master at like all the technical stuff. And sure enough, don't be careful what you ask for because I got it during that transaction.
No, I know. I love that. And you're able to overcome. And then not only that, I mean, you were just like quick on your toes. You were able to pivot and you found your way, right? A little bit of a risk taker you are.
A little bit.
See, that's a positive thing because this, I know that this business throws people in so many different
Mhm.
directions and you never know what client's going to call you for what kind of a service. I mean, now this kind of leads me into a random thought of, have you ever had one of those like wild stories with a deal that kind of just was shocking to you or like a really crazy situation in a home that you had to overcome?
I've had plenty, and I don't know what's appropriate to share or not. But I've had a lot, and I think the biggest challenge for me has been dealing with different personality types, and that's been a huge learning curve for me.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, sometimes you don't know if you're cut out to service a specific type of personality. But I had one in particular. I'm not going to get into the details because I could literally sit here all day and talk about it. But long story short, we went under contract on a home, and 3 days before we closed, I got a text from the buyer that he was going to go book himself into a mental health institution.
Oh my goodness. Isn't that wild, right? Like you just never know what's going
Crazy,
on in people's
crazy.
lives and you're about to go do this
Yeah,
thing and
yeah.
good for him that he's getting help, but also
Yeah, I
that's a
was like,
wild predicament.
so how are you going to sign? And you're closing
Right.
in 3 days. So there was so much more to that. So I'm not going to get into the details of
Right,
it.
right, right.
But that has been the biggest challenge for me, I think, is just knowing how to handle different people and how
Right.
to handle different situations because everybody is in a very different situation and
Right.
not every transaction is always a pleasant one. Even though you want them to be there, they're not always that.
Absolutely. Well, you're really a servant to the community.
You are.
You
Yeah,
definitely are. And you really are, doing something for the greater good because you're helping people to grow their futures. And that's got
I
to be
agree.
very, very rewarding. Can you share a story of somebody that just has brought you a lot of joy through a transaction?
Yeah, it's actually my first client who I ever got on social media, and
Ah,
she's one of my best friends now. And what's funny about her, and I want to share a little bit about her so we can kind of pivot back into social media a little bit.
yeah.
So, this is somebody that had been following me for over a year. She never engaged with any of my stories, any of my posts. So I had really no idea that we were following each other at the time. And I remember one day she reached out to me and she had a question on solar panels. So basically, she had moved into her house and quickly came to realize that this house was no longer fitting their needs. And
Mm,
she was in the market and she had found a house that she wanted to go see. I had answered her questions on solar panels. And then she told me straight up, hey, there's a house that was listed in Apopka and I really want to go see it. Do you have time? And I said, sure, let's go this afternoon.
right.
So we met that afternoon. Long story short, I have done 5 transactions for her and her family since then. And I
Wow.
got invited to her wedding, watched her marry her ex husband at the time, and then that didn't pan out. So we had to sell her home. And I have been with her through so many of those stages, but that was my first client that I ever got on social media. And I love her to death. I still text her, and it's crazy. And I love sharing that story because I think a lot of times we are so pigeonholed in our way of thinking. And we think, oh, if we're not getting the engagement, the comments, it's not working.
Ooh, that's a great point that you're making. It
And
is,
yeah,
I think somebody said the other day, that have X amount of views, but you only have X amount of likes. The reality is too, like people are seeing you and they know what's going on.
yeah. And it's important to track your insights and your analytics. Don't get me wrong, I do that a lot. But I think if that's your sole focus, you're missing the point, right? You're there to provide value to people and to be a resource for people. And that doesn't always mean that you're going to get engagement. In fact, the posts where I have felt I've gotten business from, or the posts that have spoken to people, are sometimes the posts that I just don't get too much engagement on. So I like to remind people of that because I think you have to start somewhere. And if you don't have the right focus, it really sets up the trajectory of your social media, I don't know, not career, but your,
Yeah, your presence and
yeah.
in general, and kind of like it really does, it goes back to the whole thing of like, what's your why and are you being authentic? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very easy to tell when somebody's not being
Yep.
authentic. And nobody wants to see somebody pandering to a camera,
Yeah.
so just speak from the soul and then everything will come,
Yeah.
right?
I
And I
agree.
also think it's a testament to consistency
Mm-hmm.
because everybody knows that that's like a huge secret to success. And over time, that just flourishes and it continues to grow,
Mm-hmm.
so we're planting these seeds and we're watering them for the bigger picture.
Everybody loves the glamour on social media. And people don't realize, though, the best way to get results is just to be consistent. And consistency is not glamorous at all.
Absolutely. No, right? And the time you just be like, oh, am I posting this thing again? Or am I showing myself too much at the gym? Am I showing whatever about real estate too much? And the reality is that, maybe somebody is unfortunately busy or in their own thing and they don't see what you post every single day.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the first time they're picking something up. Or,
Yep.
maybe that morning they didn't want to work out and they saw that you went to go work out. And next thing you know, that they got motivated to go. So, no, it is a positive thing. I love that. You know, it's interesting because I know you have a lot going on,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like something that's really important to talk about is who you are and your family. So you are a wife and a mother,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of just want to hear like how do you balance everything?
I, for one, make sure that everything is in my calendar. My dates with my husband, if I'm
Even your dates
taking,
with your husband, I love that.
yeah, they're in my calendar. And it's so important because sometimes we lose sight of that. And I think this business and me having the experience of seeing my parents, I've seen firsthand how easy it is to be sucked into the everyday hustle of real estate.
Right.
And that was my mom pretty much the last 20 years. I didn't get to see much of her growing up. She had a very successful career, but one thing that she told me right when I moved is, I wish that we would have spent more time with you guys growing up. And I never want to have that same regret. So that's why I just make it a priority to put everything in my calendar. And also, my husband is the most supportive person in the world.
I love
When
that.
I told him I was leaving my corporate America job, he said, do it, do what makes you happy. He didn't ask any questions. And the first year, I struggled here and I wasn't doing all that well. And he was so supportive. Not once did he tell me, this isn't for you, or maybe go find another job. He's like the most special person, honestly.
He
So
just believed in you and he
yeah,
knew that no matter what you did, you were going to be successful. It's
yeah,
just a matter of time
yeah,
sometimes, which also leads into the fact that you have a beautiful boy named Noah.
yeah.
What have you learned? What's the number one thing you've learned by being his mom?
Oh wow, a lot. But I think the number one thing is learning when to say no. So that's something that I had to start doing very early on as soon as I knew that I was going to have him
Yeah.
is learning where to spend your time. So I do my best to be very strategic about how I run my business and what clients I say yes to and who I say no to because at the end of the day, if I'm saying yes to them, I'm saying no to my family. So that's been a big learning lesson for
I
me.
just want us to be like, Psh. I wish we could like have like a bubble come up right now on the screen that like really repeats that because that's huge.
Yeah.
You know, saying yes to a client, sometimes saying no to your family.
Mm-hmm.
And it circles back to what your mom said, and that's time you're never going to get back. And
Yeah.
we can find a way to do it all, but you just have to be a little intentional about it.
Yeah, that and also just accepting that the perfect balance does not exist.
Ooh.
I'm not always perfect at it.
Yeah.
Um, but I do my best and I know that there are days when I am out 8 to 12, 8 a.m., sorry,
Yeah,
8
no, of
a.m. to
course.
8 p.m. and 12 hours a day working showings. And I know that means this weekend I will do my best to not schedule any appointments with clients and I will be at home. So again, putting everything in your calendar and just being very strategic about who is your target client, who is your ideal client, because you're saying no to something else, right? So if I'm saying yes to a client, I want it to be worth my time and I also want to be able to enjoy that time.
So everything that you're sharing with me to me inspires me, which makes my brain go to leadership. And I'm thinking, what is it that you feel like a leader means? If you had to name your perfect leader, what would that person look like?
I am a firm believer that leaders lead by example and from the bottom down. Sorry.
Yeah.
I always mix that up. But from the bottom up. I said it wrong again.
But everybody knows you know.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to lead by example and to care and invest into the people that you are mentoring, that you're training, but from a personal standpoint. So it's not always about work, right? And that's always been very important for me and my team is getting to know who they are at the core of their being. What's important for them? What do they thrive off of? And Bhavna, for example, that was one conversation. She's a team member on my team. A conversation we had early on. I wanted to know who she was. What do you want your business to look like? What is important to you at the end of the day? Because if I'm not asking those questions, how can I possibly help you or help pave your path? It's impossible. So I really believe in that and just being genuine and authentic. I don't always have it figured out. And I vibe with people who relate to me in that sense because, I mean, let's face it, none of us have it completely figured out.
Right.
But sometimes I think in this business, especially with agents who have been in it for a long time, sometimes you get intimidated and you don't realize, all that they had to go through to get to that point. So
Right.
I try my best to be very relatable in that sense and share my journey and share my stories because you'll find that you have a lot of things that you could relate to other people about.
No, I love that. And I feel like it goes to the old saying, if you're fulfilled, the money will follow.
Mhm.
Or if you're doing what you love, the money will follow.
Mhm.
If you are, truly being authentic, like you're saying, all that will follow. And so the fact that you can, gift somebody their authenticity
Mhm.
speaks volumes as to how you see that. So I think that's really, really special. So I kind of feel like being a little silly because I know you and you're my friend, and I know you have this really fun, silly side to you.
Sometimes.
So I want to know, like, what's a secret about you that maybe not everybody would know? Like, I don't know, like, do you put pineapple on your pizza?
No, absolutely not.
Really, I like that.
Really?
Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. Maybe because
No.
I'm Cuban, it's like tropical.
No, it's funny because my husband loves pineapple on his pizza and he also loves anchovies, which
Oh
are
no, I can't do
a big
that.
fat no. No, I'm the pickiest eater in the world.
Are you?
Yes, so you won't ever catch me putting pineapple on my pizza.
Do you have any other secrets about you that you would want to share?
Any other secrets?
Like a weird fear or like anything about you that not everybody would know or expect.
So not a weird fact or anything, but I am fluent in Spanish. I grew up in Central
Oh,
America, and every time I tell people that I speak Spanish, everybody looks at me weirdly. Because growing up, a lot of people thought I was of Asian descent or something else, but no, I'm
interesting.
Central
Are
American.
you sure you took a 23andMe?
100%.
Ok, entonces vamos a hacer un poquito en español.
Okay. Dime.
Dime qué te gusta hacer los fines de semana.
Los fines de semana me gusta, me
Oh my
gusta.
gosh, she's like, even with an accent, I'm just
Ah,
testing you for fun. This is a great, I did not even know that about you.
yeah.
I love this. I'm just gonna call you
Are you gonna
randomly
let me
now.
finish?
Yes, of course.
So, me gusta salir a cenar con mi esposo, con mi hijo, pasar tiempo en la piscina.
She speaks it
That's it.
very well. So if you're listening out there and you're looking for a Spanish speaking
I do
real
speak
estate
Spanish,
agent,
yes.
oh my
Yeah. Yeah.
goodness. What a great secret that I learned
Yeah.
today. I love that. Now I can refer you over some good Spanish speaking
Yes,
clients
please do.
too.
I'm always open.
I have another interesting question that I wanted to ask. I mean, you know, because you are a leader, because you do have a team, and because you are, essentially so strong at social media, if I was a new agent and I was, coming into the business and wanted to know how to start on social media, what's some advice or some pointers you would like to share?
So I can probably think of two things that still make a difference for me. And one of them is finding a balance between not letting it all be just about work. Because at the end of the day, people are hiring a person and an individual. And if they don't know you, if they don't know what's important to you, it's really hard to be able to relate to somebody who all they do is just post, post, post. And if you're not showing and showcasing your personality, what's it like to work with you on a day to day? What are you doing outside of work? Some of my clients, when I've asked them, I had one lady that she told me the only reason that she hired me at the time is because I had just had a baby and so had she. And we had common
Yeah.
ground and she wanted to support that.
Oh, I
And
love
if I had not
that.
shown anything about my family, and I'm very cautious about what I post about my family. I
Of
don't feel comfortable
course.
posting everything, but I posted enough for her to know that I had just had a baby and she related to that. So you need to be relatable. It can't just all be real estate. You are a person outside of being a realtor or a mortgage professional, whatever it is. So